everyone. Okay, so in this video I really want to talk about how my teachers reacted when they saw my self-harm. And I mentioned this in another video, which is the video that I suggest today, and I'll mention it in the end. When I was self-harming, especially in my teenage years, I guess when I was in high school, it was pretty bad. One holiday, I completely butchered all of my ankles, all the way, both my ankles on the insides and on my arms and wrists as well. When I went to school, and I remember I would wear stockings, I would wear my bracelets, I would wear long socks and shorts just so that they couldn't see the scars on the insides of my ankles. But because we see them as self-harmers, we see them on our skin all the time, that it becomes something normal to us, that soon after that, when it's so normal to us, we don't feel the need to hide it because we forget that other people will react to it. Because when I started doing it, I thought it was a normal human thing. I thought it was something that everyone accepted. I thought it was like a normal human function in a way. And so, obviously, when I was about 11 or 12, then after people reacting to them, I realized that people don't react well to self-harm. And I realized that it was a very taboo thing. And so then I realized I had to start hiding them. But because you see them so frequently, you stop thinking about hiding them because it's like a normal part of your body. It's a normal part of your skin, you know? So I was sitting in class and I had my legs crossed, and because when I say the insides of my ankles, I mean the insides of my ankles. And I was sitting cross-legged, so the insides of my ankles were showing, and my teacher was in the middle of talking to the class, and suddenly he was like, okay, everybody get to work, and we were like, okay. And then he came up to me and he's like, I want to talk to you outside. And I was like, alright. So this was my homeroom teacher, so it was my main class teacher where we did the registration, the roll call, whatever you call it. And he took me outside, and I really liked him as a teacher. He was really nice, he was really friendly, he was really reasonable. And he took me outside and took me to the classroom next to us, which was empty, and he was like, I was like, fuck, I'm in trouble, I didn't know what it was. And he was like, I saw the self-harm scars on your leg. And they were not fresh, but they were scarring. And I started crying, and I was like, I'm like even fragile to talk about it now. And I started crying, and I was like, oh. And he was like telling me about, he was telling me a story about how when he was in England and how there was another girl and another boy, two people I think he knew, that were self-harming, and that he was trying to help them as well. And then he found out that, you know, they were clean from everything and it was good. And he was like, when was the last time you did it? And I was like, I lied to him. I said it was a lot longer than it was, and he was like, you know, okay, but I really don't want you to do it. Like, if you need any help, he was like, does your parents know about this? And I was like, yes, my parents knew about this from long ago. And he was like, okay, does the counselor know about this? And I was like, yes, the counselor knows about this. And he was like, okay, then I don't feel the need to tell anybody else, because I think as a teacher it was his job to tell the head of principal. But I was telling him that, you know, I feel better. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do a lot better, you know, that was the last time I was gonna do it. And I was like really convincing him. And I think as a self-harmer, I think every self-harmer becomes really good at lying, because we're always trying to prove that we're okay. Sorry. Woo, I need to shake it out of me. We're always trying to prove that we're okay, and always trying to convince people that we're fine and that we're happy and this is the last time we're gonna do it. And I remember another teacher who was my art teacher, who I liked a lot, he recognized them and he's like, oh my god, what happened? And I was like, with my friends, and my friend, she covered for me, and she was just like, oh, we went hiking, and then we went through some grass, and ooh, it was like, she was like, I got itchy all over my legs too, so she pretty much just saved my ass. I had another teacher, which I hated. He was like the head of year, and he was always telling me to hide them, and I understood why, but he only told me after the counselor and the principal got involved with my self-harm. And to be honest, the second the school got involved with my self-harm was the second I got so much worse. I literally got so much worse because basically, at the end of freshman year, which was H1 for me, which is year 10, at the end of that, I told my counselor that I was self-harming. And I was seeing her before that for already 4 years. And I finally told her that I was self-harming because every time I saw her, I don't know why she never realized my self-harm scars, but she never did. And it was the last day of school as well. And she was like, oh, I have to tell your parents about this. And I was like, no, please don't. And she was like, okay. And I was like, I promise, I stopped. And she was like, okay. And then the next year came around and I was still seeing her every week, but she never brought up self-harm. It was like she kind of just pushed it out of her memory and forgot. And then at the end of that year, which was H2, was the end of year 11, I was talking to her, and because I knew she already knew about my self-harm scars, it was the last day of that year as well. It was like literally a year after I told her about my self-harm, and I casually just mentioned it, and she was like, are you self-harming? And I was like, yeah, I told you. And she was like, I have to call your parents. And I was like, fuck no. And like my parents knew I was doing it, but I was always lying to them. I was always being like, oh yeah, I did it ages ago, or no, I don't do it anymore. And then she called them, and then it was right before my exams. And because it was the last day of school, but then I had exams afterwards, it really fucked me up. And I was telling my dad, I was complaining about her, like even though she helped me out so much, she literally put this weight on me right before my exams. My exam was going to be the next day. That was going to be my first exam. And I had all my friends being like, whoa, what the fuck? And then I remember she made the school involved, and it was absolutely hell. Like, you know, they, at one point, it was absolutely hell when they knew, because I felt like they judged me like crazy. You know? Like, it was crazy. And it's like, when I left school, or when I got kicked out, for them to blame it all on me, like, really confuses me, because it's like, you guys literally made me feel like shit for self-harming. They literally made me feel like shit, that it affects me now. It affects me how I am now. Look at me, I'm fucking in tears because they fucking made me feel like shit, where they had to make me hide my self-harm scars, and I understood why, because they couldn't let other people see it. But how did that make me feel? When you make someone who has an addiction, when you exclude them and make them feel isolated, who are they gonna run to? They're gonna run to their cigarettes, they're gonna run to their drugs, they're gonna run to their self-harm, instead of making them feel isolated. We should make them feel loved and welcomed, and they did exactly the wrong thing. There's a whole video called What You Know About Addiction Is Wrong, and I've been meaning to make this video about addiction for a really long time. Okay? But literally, those people, if you're from that school fucked up. For a school who pays a shit ton of money to go to that school. It's a fucking expensive school. The bus is fucking expensive to go to that school. And for them to do the exact wrong thing to me, they just literally, I hate to like put a lot of the blame to them, but it's like, they really fucked up. You know, they really fucked up. They started putting me on part-time school, as in, instead of making me go to school 5 days a week so that I could feel like a normal person and that I don't feel handicapped, they put me on 3 times a week, and on those, 3 days a week, I had to see the counselor for a period of each day, you know, so instead of having 8 periods a day, I would have 7 periods. That's just like lesson timetable thing. So people had to watch me leave class and come back to class. So I literally felt like a fucking alien. Like there was something so massively wrong in my head that they had to exclude me so much from everybody else. I wasn't allowed to go out to lunch because in the next year I wasn't allowed to go out to lunch, which is when they go to the town, just like downtown, and they just get lunch at McDonald's or whatever. I wasn't allowed to do that. I had to sit in the office and do work, and it sucked because I felt like I was being punished instead of being helped. And it really sucked because they really fucked up on that. I have to go out. I was not expecting to be this mad, but now that I think about it, I think I pushed so much of that out of my memory because I pushed so much out of my memory because I remember it affected me like a lot. It really, really affected me, and for them to have their pride so high, I always felt like they were always blaming my family and I. And it was like I was telling them when they found out about my self-harm, I was telling the counselor, I was like, please don't tell anybody because it's gonna make it a lot worse. People are gonna think of me differently. Imagine how I was thinking about how my teachers were thinking of me. I was thinking maybe they think I'm stupid, maybe they think my parents are bad when my parents are lovely people. And all I did was, I felt like every single teacher knew after, it's 12 o'clock, after the principal and my head of year knew, all of the teachers knew, because they all knew that I was leaving class and everything, and it really, really, really sucked. I don't know what's the moral of the story when people ask me, how do I tell someone that I'm self-harming? Because my experience was bad, because when I told, the school that I was self-harming, all they did was shun me and made me feel like an alien and made me feel like I was mental and crazy. And maybe I was, but they shouldn't have made me feel that way. And you know what? When I told my parents, I'll just make a whole video about that. But wow, I can't believe like all that came out of me. And the more I talk about it, the better I feel. Like I literally just cried. And now I feel really good. So please, yes, at the end of this video, do watch how I stopped self-harming if that really will help you. It's not a very organized video, and hopefully I will make a part 2. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a really good day. And please, 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 please keep yourself together and stay alive for me, okay?